Hello, beautiful humans. My name is Sophie K. I am a life and vitality coach, and I am about to be landing on the Online Prosperity Show, which I'm super excited about. What you can expect of this episode is finding out how you, as a busy person, can learn how to have more fun and find more time for the things that are really important to you without sacrificing the things that you are already doing. So stay tuned and listen to what we've got to tell you.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into personal and professional growth. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a guest whose journey epitomizes transformation and vitality. Now, Sophie, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous, thank you. What a pleasure to be speaking to you from the other side of the world.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. We should have actually just started to show off, Sophie. Und wie geht es dir?
Mir geht es sehr gut, vielen Dank. Und dir?
Yeah, say good, we
Yeah.
Santa, all of those things, but it's all good. That's the best we could do on short notice. We don't want to confuse the listener, right? They might start picking up on a vibe and thinking, wait a minute, what did I just click onto here? Now, for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for choosing the Online Prosperity Show to be your place for entertainment and, as we have said, insights for personal and professional growth. And as you have already established, Sophie is a vitality and a life coach. She's also a trained facilitator and a speaker who's dedicated over a decade to helping individuals discover their own unique paths to success. But obviously, it didn't all start like this. Sophie has had her own fair share of highs and lows, from being a stressed out multitasker to now becoming a beacon of balanced living. We're going to explore how she actually helps busy professionals to stop struggling or scratching their heads while empowering them to work smarter, not harder, and also uncover the secrets behind her Thrive Guide program, and also a slew of resources that she is cooking up behind the scenes there. Trust me, you won't want to miss a minute of this conversation. Now, for those that are watching right now, I know you are too busy doing life and things that would either pay you or satisfy you, but I just want you to indulge us for a minute, and I'm going to pose you a question where I want you to sort of maybe imagine having to juggle a career, family, and also your personal aspirations, and only to realize that stress has now become your constant companion. I know fish don't see the water that they swim in, and so many of us think stress is actually a rite of passage or a badge of honor. But let me tell you something, when you start burning out, those receipts from the burns unit in the hospital, they cost money. They cost a lot of effort, and they cost a lot of grief. And I don't want you to be the one going through. Sophie's story is one of resilience and reinvention. And we're going to navigate her experiences so we find how we too can navigate the stresses that come in life. Now, Sophie, I could start talking in tongues. I tried to speak in German earlier on, and the only thing I knew was to say hi, and I combined French and Swahili, and only to find out that, no, you're in New Zealand, so I was in the wrong continent altogether. So before I keep talking about things I know nothing about, your adventure starts off at age 16 when you moved from Germany to New Zealand. Tell us a little bit about what that period was like for you, and why was that move instituted?
Well, I think if you're imagining life as a 16-year-old, the most important thing is really when are you going to hang out with your friends next, and when are you going to have your next meal? It's really what you think about the most, right? So at 16, my mum provided this opportunity for me to come back to New Zealand, which is actually where I was born. But I hadn't spent much time in New Zealand in my early childhood, and I decided that I wanted to take the opportunity to see what it was like to go to school in New Zealand rather than in Germany. And I remember arriving here, and I believe, yeah, it was quite some time ago in October. It was in October of the year, and if you don't know New Zealand, it starts to get warm then. In other parts of the world, it starts to get cold around that time. Um, it was really an eye opener having come from Europe, a fast-paced place, a fast-paced world with a lot of bureaucracy, with a lot of right and wrong ways of living, and coming to New Zealand where everybody just seemed laid back. They were wearing shorts and gumboots and, hanging out at the beach. It was just a very different environment. And coming here opened up my eyes to a different way of life, that what I thought was normal, that what I grew up with in Germany, what I knew was my status quo, wasn't the status quo for other people in other parts of the world. And I think, you don't quite understand that concept as a 16-year-old the way we do as adults. So that really shaped me, and going to school here, making new friends. Apparently, I had a terrible Oxford English accent, which you can't really tell anything. You can't tell that now because I sound like a Kiwi. But it opened up my eyes to a different way of life, and it will really shapes now the way I operate, because it means that I've become so open to different points of view. I've become so open to seeing things from a different angle, and to see and to find out whether there is something valuable for me to discover in that different point of view. And again, for anyone, who's listening, if you can relate to this, it's moving. Even just cities can feel like a big deal at that age. So it really shaped me. It really changed also my status quo of what comfort was and what I was comfortable with. It really pushed me outside my comfort zone, and I think that's what makes me so comfortable, with pushing myself outside of my comfort zone now, even to this day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, with life, change happens. And for you, it happened at that sort of young age. But you keep referring to the status quo and the way of life in Europe and things of that nature. What gave your parents the opportunity to, have a life in both countries? Because you did mention you were actually born in New Zealand to start off with, and then you had to move back. What sort of careers were they involved in?
Well, my mum actually ran her own business, so you see the entrepreneurial streak in my family runs pretty deep. My mum was running a business here in New Zealand, but they'd come across New Zealand through travels, and they decided that they wanted to stay here. So in the 80s, they lived here for a decade, and my mum started a business. She was working various other jobs as well. She was an accountant, and she was just always someone who just got on with things, who made things happen, and just had this attitude of anything is possible. Anything can be sorted out. Nothing's really a big problem. We might get angry about it for a while, but we just get on with things. And so that's what she did here. My dad was also an entrepreneur. I think for a while he was even selling caravans. And he's had quite a few different businesses in his lifetime. And I think what brought them here, to be honest, was probably that same sense of freedom that a lot of people feel here in New Zealand. I mean, it's a small place, which seems crazy, right? It's a small place. We have about 5 million people that live in this country. But when you get here, everything just seems more laid back. Everything seems more relaxed, and it is a melting pot for a lot of different cultures. And I believe that that's what creates that openness. And I think my parents were really attracted to that.
Absolutely. I can only imagine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Germany. The Autobahn is nice and fast. You can
Good.
just pull the car, and even if you've got a caravan, all you just need to do is make sure it's still hanging behind you while you're going, and things of that nature. But as entrepreneurs, obviously they would have tasted that freedom and wanted to do more, have more, and be more. But was there an expectation on you as their child to maybe to achieve or do well in school, or was that said or implied?
Good question. I'm going to have to think about this, and I would say that, from my experience in my childhood, yes, there was a silent expectation to do well in things. But it is something that I perceived. If you think of Germans as a culture, we like to do things well, and we like to do things properly, and everything is very straight and narrow. This is the way it goes. And I think this is something that I grew up with. And so that really shaped also my parents' parenting. Also because if I think back at the time that my parents were born was actually at the end of the Second World War. So they grew up with not very much. They didn't grow up in prosperity. They grew up in poverty. And they grew up having to, being part of that rebuilding of the country. And so I think that was one of the reasons why entrepreneurship, but also, pushing us as kids or wanting us to do well was important to them. They never made us do things we didn't want to do in terms of schooling. I think we were just very self-driven. When I say we, my sister and I, we were self-driven in many ways, and we were encouraged to figure out what we enjoyed, and we were encouraged to follow that. Especially my mum, she always really encouraged that, and so I followed all sorts of different fads, much down even to coming down to the things that we ate. I remember my mum would often tell the story that I had a phase as a kid that I would only eat salami. And for weeks on end, I just wanted salami all the time for every single meal. And then a few months down the track, it was ham, and then it was banana, and it was just specific food things. And she just always let us go for it. And I really appreciated that, because I think it also gave us the sense of autonomy and being able to figure out and try new things, and yeah, be comfortable in trying things.
Absolutely. That's quite an interesting sort of upbringing. And especially you did mention your sister. Did she also come with you to New Zealand, and is she still there?
Yes, she lives here too with her kids and her husband. Yes. And she loves New Zealand just the way I do. And we, don't get me wrong, we love Germany too. I think we can find appreciation for all different places in the world, because we are worldly people and a worldly family in that sense. But we do have a special connection to this place. And I think most of us will create some kind of special connection with a place in the world somewhere, or even multiple places. I think it just makes sense in terms of human biology. Yeah, it just makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, they say home is where the heart is, and wherever the heart is
Mm.
can be home. It doesn't matter what your
Yeah.
passport says. So things like that. Even I've made Australia home, and even though everything around here is just designed to kill you. I mean, we've got the most dangerous snakes, and there's dingoes and koalas and all that stuff. It's just, but I like it here. So fantastic. Now, when you then
Yeah.
came back to New Zealand, obviously you got yourself involved in design events and things of that nature. Can you just maybe walk us through that career phase and what was actually going on in your life then?
Yeah, so I discovered design actually in the last year of my schooling. I've always loved being creative. I used to often have sketchbooks, and I would draw things that were in my mind, often around fashion and different fashion designs. And I'd often draw quite, I suppose, out there outfits. But it was design that I discovered in year 13 as a modality, as a subject matter, as something that is actually a real thing in the modern world. It's a real thing in the world. It's a real thing that we can do, that we can immerse ourselves in. And I really loved it. And so I decided I was just going to follow that. I was going to follow that passion. I was going to follow that joy, and I did. And so I did a Bachelor of Design at one of the universities here in New Zealand, and immersed myself in 4 years of intense study that was quite practical. So I learned how to make furniture. I learned how to metalsmith. I learned how to weld. I learned how to make jewelry. But most importantly, I learned how to push creative concepts and how to create experiences for people. And if I think back at my degree now, that was probably the most pivotal thing for me, being able to create something that has the potential to evoke a specific experience for the viewer, a specific response from the person that is looking at it, or experiencing whatever you've created. And I loved trying out lots of different things. I wanted to make people smile. I wanted to make people feel repulsed and go, "Oh, what is this? What is this thing that she's made?" I wanted to try different things. I wanted to see how people would respond to what I was making, and that's what I spent a lot of my time at uni doing. Obviously, sort of experience design around, or maybe not so obvious to most people, experience design around that time was fairly new, and it was something that was just being thrown around in the industry. But it's something that I was very, very much interested in. Once I left university, I started to work in galleries. I started to work in events. I also, obviously, as every student, most students do that, ended up doing a stint in hospitality as well, where I held a lot of leadership roles. And that's kind of been simultaneously besides the creative side and really being interested in creating experiences for people. I was able to develop my leadership skills in various different ways. As a 16-year-old working at an ice cream shop, and then becoming supervisors and other ways. So it's the combination of the things that I did to make some money so I could go out and have some fun with my friends, and the things that I did to really build a long-term career. And it wasn't a conventional path. I didn't go to uni and think, right, what's the career that I can choose that's going to help me make the most money, or that's going to help me, create wealth. At the time, I didn't even know what creating wealth really was. It was really just following my heart, what felt good, what felt right, and what interested me. And that brought me to lots of different places, working in theatre as well for a while. So I tried a lot of different things until I finally ended in corporate, which a lot of us do, when I started a family. And that was really about the stability. And that was the first time in my life that I'd actually chose a job, because I wanted to create stability for someone else or for my family. It wasn't so much driven by what I wanted to do. And that was quite a different experience.
Yeah. And when you signed up for corporate, what sort of roles were you undertaking, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I was a digital producer, and so interestingly enough, I realized that I could use a lot of my knowledge and a lot of the things that I learned in my university degree and translate those into the digital world, which was a fascinating concept for me, because it helped me understand that just because we learn something in one area of our life, or in a particular industry, doesn't mean that we can't translate it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't become valuable knowledge at some point in your life. What I really enjoyed about corporate was obviously, you had set work hours, but it also had worked for my family. I was working in the evenings. It meant the father of my kids could be home with my girls during the in the evening, and I could be home during the day. And I enjoyed the team environment, and it was probably the place where I got exposed to the business world a lot more than I had been working in previous roles. So that was really fascinating because I got a really good look at news and media and what that world is like. And it then gave me, into the corporate world and essentially how our world runs. Because, we say it's the governments that run our countries, but I'm not so sure about that. That was a really cool insight for me. And I think that opened up my mind to looking at the world differently once again.
Absolutely. I quite like, where the conversation was going, but I'm not quite sure if this is the podcast for it. Maybe one of these days we can actually go down that rabbit hole because, many a tale can be told about how things actually are. But I'm excited about all of this. But, obviously the media world is a fast-paced world. And like you said, it's a whole different universe than the one that trickled down to us, on Wi-Fi or on radio signals or maybe on the pages of a magazine and things like that. But while you're trying to do all of this, you're trying to balance life, family, and also just your whole well-being. And that can be overwhelming even for the most organized sort of person. Can you maybe share with us a time where you actually really started feeling the stretch and how you actually went past that?
Yeah, I think everybody can get to that point, no matter where they are in life, especially in the modern world. It's such a fast-paced world. It's such a fast-paced place. And there's so much that's vying for our attention. So in terms of my own journey, when things really started to ramp up was when I decided that it would be a good idea to start a small business on the side with a friend of mine. And really what it was about a creative outlet for us, but also because we actually had a bigger vision. There was a bigger vision behind it that at the time we couldn't quite put into words, but we wanted to help people to feel more connected with themselves, to feel calmer, and we wanted to bring joy to people. So we created this gift box business, and it was trying to balance doing that on the side as well as my corporate career, looking after my children, and to be honest, looking after myself just went totally to the side. I didn't look after myself very well for a really long time. And I think also my perception of what looking after myself really was very limited. We talk about health and well-being, and we talk about nutrition, we talk about exercise, and all of those things are incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. However, well-being is so much more than that. It's how we speak to ourselves. It's, the time we give ourselves to recuperate. It's the things that we do that fill our soul, that make us feel good in life. And I didn't really have that understanding. So trying to juggle the small business on the side, obviously this was totally self-inflicted, out of this desire to do something that felt more enriching. Corporate in many ways, yes, there is ways to move up the ladder. Yes, there is ways to expand and to grow. But it wasn't quite the expansion and growth I think I was looking for. And it just shows me throughout my journey that I've always been drawn to entrepreneurship for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. That's when I really started to feel the stress. So it was definitely after my second daughter was born. I think I was 27 when she was born, and around 28, I really started to feel it, just with all the things that I felt I had to do. Yes, there were certain realities like going to work and looking after my children, but it was actually the pressure that I put on myself. And that was same as what I expressed to you about my childhood. My parents never really made me do all the things or made me work hard. I created that pressure for myself because I thought that that was the right thing to do. And I think a lot of us fall into that. We think that's what we should be doing. That's how we live life the right way, by pushing ourselves really hard and working really hard. And Working hard isn't itself the problem, but it's the space that we actually do it from. Are we working hard because we're working to something that's a bigger vision that we're passionate about? Or are we working hard because if we don't, it means that we are not doing well enough or we're not doing enough? So those are very different spaces to work from.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that, because so many people, like you are alluding to, might not realize, and some people start blaming themselves, thinking, oh, I'm 27, I'm 30, I should know better, or I should be further than I am right now. And that whole chasing the unknown and not knowing exactly what it is that you want is what really starts to cause burnout. So in your journey, you started talking about how you sort of somehow learned a bit of entrepreneurship by looking and watching your parents, and then you went on and learned design. But now you're starting a journey which really required a whole new set of skills. Where were you learning all this coaching and just the confidence to transition from corporate to being a coach from?
Yeah, so I think before I can really even just talk about where I learned all of this, I think I have to say and talk about the thing that became a real pivoting moment in my life. So it's when I separated from the father of my kids. My life, the way I thought it was going to turn out, changed, and because it took me so off guard, um, it made me stop for the first time in a really long time. It made me stop and look at my life and ask myself the question, how did I get here? Why am I not seeing the results that I want to see? Why am I seeing the results that I'm getting? And why have I even made these decisions? What are the decisions that brought me here? And it was through that inquiry and through that personal journey when I started to look to self-development. I mean, I'd been working in the gift box business, and that was also very wellness based, but it was a whole different way of looking at wellness and looking at well-being and looking after yourself. And that meant that I was deep diving into my own feelings, into what I believed about the world, into what I believed about myself, into the these rules that we make up in our head, these silent, unspoken rules of society that we're all adhering to, yet nobody really knows why we adhere to them, because for the majority of us, they don't really work for us. But it was really looking into that on my own personal level that then started to help me understand that I wasn't necessarily making the choices that I wanted to make. I wasn't necessarily making the choices based on where I wanted to go and the things I want to create in my world. I was making these choices out of reactions, out of what I thought I should be doing. There wasn't much intentionality. I was just going to see where life took me. What do I need now? Right, I'm going to go and do this. What do I need now? Right, I'm going to go and do this. But if we keep operating like that, we're always just reacting to what is happening rather than actually making things happen in a way that we want to, right? And this is where that intentionality becomes really comes into it. So it was through that period that I then also, because there's certain realities as an independent mother that, financial realities that you start to face. And I really started to look at my career and wealth building and what am I going to do now that everything's changed, everything's different from how I thought it was going to be. What am I going to do? And why am I going to do any of this? What's the point? And I know it seems like a very existentialist question, and it really is. It really got down to that moment where I go, why am I even doing any of this? And then when I started to look at my career and I started to really, again, go inside of me and think, I looked at my career, I looked at all the skills that I'd gained, I looked at all the different perspectives, I looked at all the different businesses I've worked in, I looked at all the different industries, and I asked myself, what's the red thread here? What's the common thing that I'm not seeing? And the common thing that I wasn't seeing was, again, the experience piece, but also the people. I've always been Prosper, I've always been fascinated about people, about life, about cultures, about nature. I just wanted to know how things work. There was just this natural curiosity there that was always there, even as a kid, and carried right through my adulthood. And I realized that that curiosity made me really good at figuring things out. But a skill that I started to realize I had was also to create really safe spaces for people. Because I started to remember things like when I was a teenager and I was at parties, I would often sit together with other people in the corner over a bottle of beer, and they would be telling me their life stories. They would often be telling me things that they had never told anyone else in their life. And multiple times people would say to me, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. I haven't actually told anyone this, but I really felt it was safe to say it, and they felt better after saying it. And so some of these memories were coming up for me at the time that I was really reassessing, my own career and where I was going to go and what I was going to do with the skills that I had. And the way the algorithm works, Facebook was probably listening at the time. What popped up was a free coaching workshop. And I thought, okay, well, I've got nothing to lose. So I organized babysitters and did all the things that I needed to do and went to this free coaching workshop. And I had this experience in the middle of a room of about 125 people. I was following the demonstration that the coach was doing on stage. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this demonstration, I just burst into tears. And I couldn't stop. This emotion just kept coming out and kept coming out. And it continued just for quite a few minutes. And I remember the woman that I met next to me, she said, Sophie, are you all right? And I was like, I just can't stop crying. I don't know what this is. So I spoke to the coach later on and he said, Sophie, this was trapped emotion that needed to be released. And obviously something got triggered throughout that presentation and it just released itself. And it made me stop again. And it made me think, I wonder what else is there. Ooh. And I wonder what we're all carrying with us that we have no idea about, that is actually inside of us. And that based with, kind of connected with the journey that I'd been on already, there was again that curiosity that was triggered, that deep curiosity of, I need to know more about this. And it was absolutely a personal decision. It was not I'm going to become a coach and start a business. It was just, I want to know more because something just happened to me that's never happened to me before and I want to understand. And so I decided to sign up to the coaching course that they were obviously selling at the event. And I have retrained as a coach quite a few months later. And I have to say, it was, at the time, the most ludicrous decision. I, being a single mum and still finding my feet after the separation, I didn't really have the money. Besides, there was a desire, a hunch to do this training. There was no proper rhyme or reason, but it was the best decision that I did for myself. And I had done for myself in many, many years because it transformed my life. I came out of that training as a different person and realizing that actually there was so much more out there for me. Realizing that this is what I love, that I love working with people, that I love hearing about their stories. I love hearing about where they come from. I love figuring out what makes them tick. And I feel so humbled when people tell me about, what is going on for them and to be able to be that safe space. And after I finished my training, COVID hit here in New Zealand and we went into lockdowns. And so this was then, serendipity, all of this stuff happened. And it was throughout the lockdown that I had a lot of time to think. A lot of time to think about, okay, well, I've had all these insane experiences that I can't really quite make sense of, that feel very revolutionizing to me. But what am I going to do with this now? And I had this voice in my head that said, Sophie, go for it. You know what you want to do. Start a business. And I did. And so 3 months later, I launched my business, and it's now in July, it'll be 5 years. And to be honest, I had no idea the journey was going to take me on. I had no idea that it was only the beginning. And I still very much feel like I'm very much at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. I mean, it's insane what I've done over the last 4.5, almost 5 years. But it's only the beginning. There is so much more for me to discover and so much more for me to do. And it's been such a privilege on this journey. But that's essentially how it started, or just in with really yeah, really strange things that happened that all came together and culminated in this beautiful business. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was the book The Alchemist, where Santiago just keeps going and the universe just conspires to give us that which we want and more. Half of the time we're in the way. And I think at this particular time, you actually just went out of the way. Let me park that for a second.
Yeah.
Congratulations. 5 years. All right.
Thank you.
That means you're no longer a statistic. You know what they say? A lot of businesses don't go past the 3 year mark, and a few more don't go
Yeah.
past the 5 year mark. So technically, you are no longer a statistic. So kudos to you.
Woohoo! That's exciting.
But in true business years, your business is now 2 years old. The first three are usually just
Mhm.
figuring things out and oh look, mom, no hands. But then after year
Yeah.
number three, you're now literally having to reach out to people that don't know you, and you're
Mhm.
converting and actually taking money from strangers. So it's not easy. And as you
Yeah, I
say,
feel like that's a very accurate description. Very accurate description. Yeah. It is a bit like that. Yeah.
absolutely. But
Mhm.
the thing that happened at this workshop, what exactly was it? Were you writing something or were you filming something? What exactly happened on?
No, I was just sitting in this crowd of people, and he was doing this demonstration. And it was a technique that was called emotional freedom technique. So it was a technique that was actually about releasing emotion from the body, because there's this thought that when you when you are experiencing things in life, we have emotions about those experiences, right? And when they're good emotions like happiness and excitement, we don't resist them. Those emotions just flow through us, because emotions are energy in motion. They just flow through us. But when we're experiencing things that feel uncomfortable, when we're experiencing things that are challenging us, our body often physically contracts because of the discomfort. And when we don't have the tools to be able to breathe through the emotion and work through the emotion without resisting it, the emotion can get trapped in our body. Now, and what starts to happen, much like if we don't declutter our house or we don't declutter our garage, our cupboards, it starts to get really full with stuff. And that's what happens to our body. We carry all this emotion, right? And often when we talk about energy, people, kind of think, oh, it's woo woo. It's not actually, right? The lights that are on is energy. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that we don't believe in it, right? And the same thing with there's energy in our brain with the biological, the synapses that are constantly firing for us to be able to speak and do all the things that we do. So it was that technique that he was doing at the time, which obviously I at the time didn't quite have the understanding of the power of it. And it released trapped emotion that I didn't know was there. And I actually believe that it was that release that finally made me get out of my own way, which is what you called it, right? It helped me just take that step, even though it was scary and it made no sense. And to be honest, it felt like such a miracle moment. Now I can logically make sense of it, but at the moment, it happened. It was a real miracle, and it just felt like something out of this world.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
congratulations for being brave to actually take that on, because somebody would have been like, oh, I can't be seen releasing whatever it is in public. And so many people would have been,
Mm.
closing it off. And
Yeah.
I just and liken it to driving on the Autobahn driving a Porsche, the latest Porsche they have on the market on that particular day, but you're driving it with the handbrake on. And you can go, but you're not going to go far because obviously, the brakes are there. And once you release that, wow, I don't know how far you will be able to go. And so happy for you for having experienced that in and of itself. But after having gone through that, wasn't that enough for you to just go back home, hug your kids? You went on and said, I want to launch a business, even in COVID, Somebody else would have been like, I think that's enough exposure and adventure for today, moving forward.
Well, I hear you. I suppose my mum has always fostered adventure in us. As kids, I spent a lot of time out in nature, in the fields, playing in the forests. And we would travel as much as we possibly could financially. She would take me to different places camping. Going to different places was fostered as a really normal thing, and I do really think that that's what made me such an adventurous person. And I honestly love it. I love going on adventures, and so I'm not surprised that I wanted to go and have more. Because that's just who I am. I actually get genuinely excited about things, and when that excitement hits, it's like it just multiplies and multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, and I want more, and I allow myself to follow that. And I think a lot of us inhibit ourselves. We stop ourselves from following that excitement for various reasons. Sometimes it feels like it's a too big feeling. Sometimes, we're scared to get too excited because we might get disappointed. Lots of reasons. But if we can allow ourselves to unleash that and just allow ourselves to follow that excitement, to follow that feeling of, yes, this feels right, and yes, this is crazy, but let's see where else it takes us. It can take you on absolutely insane adventures, and things that you will feel not just grateful for, but the stories that you're going to be able to pass on to your children and your grandchildren. When you're sitting out on the porch at 80 and your grandchild asks you, Grandma, why did you do this? Or when did you? And you get to tell those stories. So that's one of the reasons why I love adventure. And I can only encourage people to become more adventurous. Allow yourself to step outside your comfort zone. Your future self will thank you.
I like that. And you see, the thing is, when you started, you introduced us to your parents who were, involved in the World War and stuff like that. Whatever happened then, they could always tell us stories about how it happened, and we can't prove neither or deny those things, but we're the most documented generation, So as you say, when our kids are asking us, what did you do? What did you get up to? And if you tell a tale about you having gone to different places, they could just Google that. And if they don't find it,
I have to say, Prosper, the best stories you cannot find online. They're only in here.
Oh, fantastic. And I was thinking we've already recorded most of them. So there's more then. Is there something?
So much. Like that time I slept in the jungle, but that's maybe for another story.
I know. So for people that are probably stuck and they don't know what the sort of next step would be, where on the internet can they go to find you and maybe discover more about how you can best help them? And maybe do you have any suggestions of what initial steps they can actually take in order for them to transition into a more balanced and fulfilling life, career, or existence?
Yeah. So where people can find me on my website, which is sophiek.co.nz, that is currently getting an overhaul. So I will be dropping soon an entire resource library that is packed with featured articles, blog posts, videos, podcasts. Your podcast will also land on there, and so people can consume a lot of this this content that I've created. And the reason I create this content is because I want people to get inspired, and I want them to think beyond their normal way of thinking. Because it's only when we start thinking outside of those confines that we start finding different solutions for the problems that we may have had for a really long time. And one of the things that I always like to say to everyone that I meet who asks me, where do I start? There is two bits of advice I would give you. Number one is stop. Sit down, take a piece of paper, and just write what comes to mind. Don't overthink it. You can't get it right. You can't get it wrong. Just let it come out. If we don't stop and allow ourselves to spend time with our feelings and what's going on in our head, we will never be able to figure out how to move forward because we will be so stuck in the noise of it that's inside of us. So step number one is just stop, take a piece of paper, a pen. If you don't like to write, you can also record voice messages. Doesn't matter what you do, but just stop and allow yourself to really pay attention to how you're feeling and where you are at in this very moment in time, and give yourself that space to hear yourself. The second thing, when people ask me where do I start, I always say, well, once you've stopped and you figure out what's going on, you start literally anywhere. There is no right or wrong place to start. Sometimes it's good to start where it feels easy to start. Sometimes it's good to start where it feels like it's the thing that's going to make the most impact. Sometimes it's good to start just with whatever you think is right now. There may not be a reason. It's just a feeling. And that's what I love about this work, Prosper, is there's no right or wrong. There is just what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And whatever works in the moment, whatever feels like that is going to move you forward, follow that. Give yourself permission to do it your way. And the more you give yourself permission to do it your way, the more you will rise, the more you will expand, the more you will thrive, the more you will get all the things that you've always wanted. Because again, there is no right or wrong way of going about it. And we're really lucky to live in a time, in a world where anything is possible. And there's a lot of opportunities available to us that a lot of our ancestors and our previous generations didn't have to that same extent. So just give yourself permission to do it your way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll make sure that I'll put all those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey there. And now, Sophie, I mean, this has been incredible, but it would be remiss for me to not ask. I mean, you did sort of hint on a time when you slept in the jungle, and just looking behind you there, you might have just walked into your office and then you thought, oh, maybe I'm in a jungle because all those plants that are behind you there might have just given you a bit of an awakening there. How do you manage to keep such a nice, large looking semi garden behind you there? It's just a sign of life.
Yeah, it's actually, I think I mentioned this to you. It took me a really long time to learn to keep them alive. I used to kill pretty much every single plant. And this is an interesting thing. This was very normal for me before that big pivot happened with the separation. And I really started to look at my life. I used to find it really hard to keep plants alive. And then something happened sometime after that where I started to become interested in plants. And I started with one plant, and I thought, I'm going to try and keep this thing alive. And what I did is I watched it. I looked at it every single day, and I looked at it and I thought, do you look happy or do you not look happy? And if it didn't look happy, I checked its soil. Did it need water? And sometimes I just moved it around and just tried different places. And what I've discovered is that not every plant likes the same place in the house. And so it's been to grow the little jungle in the background and the other jungles in my house has been a labor of love of just testing different places, and not being afraid to have the occasional plant die again and try again. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is just, just like an analogy of business. You know what I mean? It needs to be nurtured. You need to check its soil, like you're doing right now, checking the website to see if it's fit for purpose for where you are now going. A lot of things move, and sometimes you might not be appreciated by people because you're in the wrong niche. And if you move yourself, then you might be actually receiving a lot more accolades and people raving about the post that you're putting out and things of that nature. And I just love that you've recreated a whole, business analogy in your office there. And it's just a way of learning. And once you can care for something until it flourishes, that means you definitely have allowed yourself to also be in that sort of space. So kudos for you for showing us lessons that you didn't even know you were giving just by being you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I thank you for creating the space for people to have these conversations and to be able to listen to these stories and the wisdoms that we all have to share, because we all have a story, Prosper. We all have things to share and we all have things to learn from each other. So thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Now that you've always been reinventing yourself, pivoting, or maybe changing and switching and everything else, what's next? What can we be excited about, Sophie?
What's next? So, one thing I have been very excited about for quite some time, and this is actually quite funny because I used to hate public speaking until my first coach said to me, Sophie, you need to start doing Facebook Lives. And then I did, and I hated them for a really long time. And now I love speaking in public. And so, what you can expect more of me is to see me more on stage. I'm looking for more speaking opportunities here in New Zealand, but potentially also overseas, because I want people to learn that they have an option to do life differently. I'm on a mission to help people see that for themselves. And yes, I run a business, and yes, I want to build wealth and all those beautiful things, but the core of my message, the core of my mission is actually about helping change the world to be a better place for our future generations, in particular for my girls who I love very, very much. And I don't want them to think that it has to be normal to be stressed out and overwhelmed all the time. It actually doesn't have to be normal, and it's not normal. It's not how we were our human body and our human being was designed to live. So yeah, I want to do more of that. I want to bring this mission to the world and spread this way of thinking and this perception so people can figure out what works for them, their own perceptions. But that's going to be my focus for the next year, besides obviously serving my clients and always reinventing my programs and serving them in better ways. That is always an ongoing creative project for me.
Absolutely. I think you've just given so many people permission to be, do, and have a happier existence. And kudos to those girls. They have a very strong role model there. So I can't wait to see what people are going to do with the information you shared with us today.
Thank you. Me too.
Fantastic. And for those that are listening, thank you so much for going on this journey with us. Obviously, the highs and lows of being Sophiediscovered. And if you found value in this episode, please share it with somebody who's actually going through stuff. They might be burning out, they might be stressed, and they don't quite know how to balance, their yin and their yang, or whatever it is they're trying to balance these days. I've heard there's chakras that need balancing as well, and my taxes and my books. Oh, that's a lot of balancing that needs to happen, Sophie. But anyway, people like yourself are there to show us what to start with and where to begin. So I'm really excited for Sophie and her journey, and also those people that are going to embark on this journey with her. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show. As you've heard from Sophie herself, there's a lot of wisdom that is being dropped on this particular show. And I encourage you to join us on the next episode, where we're going to be exploring ideas on how to cultivate a happier existence. Until next time, I want you to remember something. To be, do, and have a happier existence, it just starts with you choosing the very thing that you think is going to make you happy. I wish that you could start living fully and keep thriving. Bye for now.